I'd now like to welcome our final speaker for this session to the stage, Mr. Andrew Robertson. Andrew is actually a senior policy analyst for APL. His role sees him being mainly responsible for trade and market access, as well as labour and workforce policy. And he's going to briefly update us on some of the changes to the skilled migration program in Australia.
Just going to play this one by ear a little bit. Haven't got the sort of speaking notes for the PowerPoint there, but never mind. Thanks everybody, and good morning. I'm Andrew Robertson. Thanks very much for the introduction there, Ashley, and thank you very much to the previous speakers. That was really interesting and it's quite inspirational stuff. Unfortunately, my talk today is a little more dry than that, but I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible so we've got more time for Q&A. I'll be talking about the skilled migration policy reforms, and Estelle McNally earlier spoke a little bit about some of this stuff, so apologies if there's a little bit of double up. I guess the first thing to note, as Estelle said, is that the 457 visa is no more. Well, I should say also that this slide is a little bit alarmist because actually the 457 visa does still exist out there, it's just that it can't be applied for anymore. So practically speaking, from April 2018, the 457 visa can no longer be applied for. Any applications that were lodged for the 457 visa before that are still being processed as normal, and any workers who are on existing 457 visas will be allowed to stay on those until those visas expire. So there's no need to immediately update any of your workers who may be on 457s to the new visa, the TSS visa, the temporary skills shortage visa that Estelle talked about before, and I'm going to talk about it in a little bit more detail. So the temporary skills shortage or TSS visa, which is subclass 182, is divided into three principal streams depending on where the occupation for the candidate that's being sought has been listed. There's a short-term skilled occupation list, and there's a few jobs that I've put below that list that are relevant to our industry, including pig farmer. There's a medium and long-term strategic skills list, a few other jobs there, and there's a regional occupation list. And depending on the worker you're looking for, the job category that they can be put into, that will determine a few things about the sort of TSS visa that you can get. So the short-term skilled occupation list, which is where, as I said, the pig farmer occupation is currently sitting, has these principal features. A 2-year duration. 2-year duration, that's down from the 4-year duration of the previous 457 visa. This is renewable once on shore to make, I suppose, a total of a 4-year visa. But very importantly, there's no pathway to permanency. That's been very disappointing to our industry, and many producers are worried about the effect that this might have on their ability to solve their long-term on-farm skills shortages. There are also some increased fees and levies, and Estelle mentioned those before. These fees include, well, I did have my notes there, but unfortunately I can't see them and I don't remember the exact application fee. I think it was $1,150 for this visa. And there's the levy, again, that Estelle talked about, the Skilling Australia Fund, which replaces some of the previous training levies that were asked of employers before. The Skilling Australia Fund was only recently passed by the Senate, and it introduces sort of a flat per annum fee for producers or companies in different categories, whether they're classed as a smaller company with a turnover of less than, I think, 10 million, or above that, and that will determine how much they have to pay per worker per year. The second stream of the TSS visa is for occupations found on the medium or long-term strategic skills list. This visa is probably most similar to the mainstream 457 visa that's been replaced. It has a 4-year duration. Once again, that's renewable. A pathway to permanency, as under the old system, but of course it also includes those increased fees and levies. And the third stream is for occupations that are found on the regional occupation list. This stream is very similar really to the last stream, the medium and long-term skills shortage stream. There's a 4-year duration with a pathway to permanency. There's those increased fees and levies again. But this visa is restricted to regional areas. Regional areas, under the definition of the Department of Home Affairs, is basically anywhere outside of the metropolitan and surrounding areas of Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. So obviously there are a few disadvantages to this system that are affecting our producers. As I said, most important among those has been the removal of the pathway to permanency. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what APL has been trying to do to mitigate some of those problems. The first thing we've been trying to do is to have the occupation, in particular pig farmer, but all of those other occupations which are associated with our industry, moved onto either the medium long-term list or onto the regional occupation list. So far, despite the evidence and the advocacy we've put forward to government, again, I should acknowledge the support that we've received from producers in the form of those who completed the labour survey, which we did in August last year. That evidence we thought was quite compelling. It seems as though so far the Department of Jobs, which is administering these lists, has disagreed with that, but we'll continue to talk to the various government agencies and to the lawmakers about how we can get those changed over. The second thing that we've been doing is trying to advocate for having our occupations put onto the regional occupation list. The regional occupation list. We think our occupations are very important to regional Australia, where there are those critical skills shortages. In that area, we've probably had sort of a partial victory in that one of the occupations we asked for, which was agricultural technician, was placed on the regional list. Pig farmer, though, and many others, unfortunately, remains on the short-term list. And the third thing that we've been doing to try to get around some of these issues is to maintain the integrity of the pork industry labour agreement. And again, this is something that Estelle talked about. And I'm pleased to say that in that area, we've probably had a fair bit more success. We've managed to retain the pathway to permanency for the occupation senior stock person piggery within that labour agreement. And not only that, the government also agreed to extend the duration of the labour agreements from 4 to 5 years. And they also agreed to reduce the period of time that is required before a worker can apply for the pathway to permanency for the permanent residency visa from 4 years to 3 years. So from our perspective, that was a win, but we still see some room for improvement in the pork industry labour agreement. And ideally what APL will be working to do with the government and with producers is to further amend the agreement so that the occupation pig farmer can be added beside senior stock person piggery, and that will just provide employers with additional flexibility in who they employ under their labour agreements. So I'll talk a little bit about that pork industry labour agreement. Well, I actually covered these points already, so we can just skip past that one. And that's the basic summary I wanted to give you today. If you want more information, we have more on the APL website, which can be found under the Trade and Industry Focus section. And in there you'll see a tab which will take you to some more information on trade and labour. You can also visit the website of the Department of Home Affairs and search for industry labour agreements, and you will find more information about the pork industry labour agreement and also copies of the agreement template to have a look at. Information sheets are available at the APL stand outside, and you can also always call me, and my number is there, or email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions then or indeed right now. So thank you very much for your time.
It's like I said, people make a lifestyle choice. if you think about the way they think about jobs these days, it's like, what kind of organisation or what kind of community do I want to be a member of? Like joining a club. And so when they use as their own yardstick the things that really matter to them, like Catherine said, the very clear sense of what matters to them, and millennials will be really different. But I find that how I've always thought about it is this way, a 65 or a 60 to 70-year-old will want something completely different from the world of work as a 50 to 60, 40 to 50, and so on and so forth, all the way down to your 20s. Everybody wants something different versus where their life is, the need states in their life. And so organisations need to be really clear about attracting people on the basis of the why and their values, and they'll make decisions on that, but then they'll also use as their own yardstick what matters to me. Do I want to be a part of this? Are they, the question they ask is, are they worthy of me? And I think that's more of it. But I think there's also this social obligation. I won't talk too much about it, but there's a social obligation. The number of times we've had workers in organisations that I've been in, Bathurst, for instance, one of our factories in Bathurst, and we had a guy, late 60s, not ready to retire, but he would show up to work every day, tend to the garden. He wasn't getting paid for it, but he just, the whole thought of being at home, doing nothing, was frightening to him. And I think there's this obligation, because the kids in their 20s are looking at the way the organisation treats somebody like that and form a view about what matters. I guess that's that complete yardstick. It's a very different way of working now.
And recruiting people's different. It used to be if you offered somebody a job, they'd say yes before you'd even finish the sentence. Now they go, okay, now I need to make a decision whether or not I want to work with you, I want to work for you. So I'd like to come back and spend some more time talking to you, because I'm making a decision here. It's not just the one-sided employer makes a decision and employee says yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to work 4 days for you instead of 3 and play tennis. Or, are they? Is it important enough to change what they do outside of work?
Really good question. It's the challenge for organisations is figuring out. It gets back to the purpose and the why. Is that there's a lot more flexibility and latitude required in terms of how you traditionally define a job. Hey, it's 9 to 5, it's 5 days a week, suck it up. Or, you get paid enough money to put in the extra hours on the weekend, that kind of stuff. There's a lot more latitude now. I think there are some jobs that will just fit that paradigm. And for the right person will make the fit, that I'm prepared to work the 5 days a week, that job suits me. This is as much about you as a business saying what you will and you won't tolerate. Bottom line is, though, that big reason why people leave, that matters. That matters significantly, and the purpose matters. In a family-run organisation like a farm, it's kind of, I won't say it's easy, but it's, there's every farm I dealt with, or every farmer I met during my time at Elders, and I'd spend a lot of time in the field, there's a real clarity about what we're here to do. It's, this is a family business. We run the family business, right? And that works for the people who are in the family, but when you talk with a farmer who's saying, my son's not interested in this gig anymore and he's thinking about moving on, well, he's got a new problem to solve, and they've got to think laterally. So I think you've got to be really clear. We used to say, when we organised and were clear about our values, we used to say, if this isn't for you, then we're cool with that. Come and see me and I'll find a way for you to leave with dignity. And so you've got to be really clear about what you can and you can't do, because both matter.
Question for Catherine. From your perspective, how effective is employee engagement surveys in quantifying satisfaction of employees?
It's a data point. They serve a purpose. It gives you some science around perhaps your gut feel. So yes, they add value. They're not essential, but they are a way of adding value. Having conversations with your people about how they're feeling about this workplace, whether they're committed to staying, what encourages them to want to go the extra mile, what behaviours they are looking to achieve, what skills they're looking to achieve. Having conversations is also absolutely important. The surveys are a data point, bit of information that helps, but they're not essential.
The best ones I've seen work is where, it's interesting from my perspective as a HR director, I get a sense of how the organisation, what the sentiment is. But it's when I've seen them work really well is when a line manager, they're empowered to say, right, here is what your team, here's how the team thinks. And the line manager says, geez, are we comfortable with this? We're going to own this. What are we going to do about it? What needs to change? Help me make the decision around that. That's where otherwise it's just numbers, just a data point. And there's some real innovation happening in that where you can, sentiment analysis in real time, you can get that at any one stage. A manager can get a sense of whether his people are engaged. But you don't need a survey. You just got to talk. Really talk to your people and you'll get a sense of whether they're in or they're out. And, and give them the opportunity and permission to call a spade a frickin' shovel when it comes to talking with you.
I think I need a bit of help as an older manager, and I've been through a few experiences. I wonder how you deliver the passion and change the culture sometimes. We have to, in the pig industry, and we're going into a tougher period now, hold on to good people, but also to deliver some changes. And a simple analogy would be blokes riding around on four-wheel motorbikes, and I'm passionate about not getting anyone killed on our joint. Yeah. Now, this is just a simple situation, but how do you deliver that? Do you deliver that over a lunchtime break and say, look, or read out a story, there's another 27 died in Australia, flipped on motorbikes, or how do you deliver these things in a passionate but also forceful way so that folk do what you're trying to engage? And when you look at the culture of some of corporate Australia, another bloody passion of mine is the Telstra, but I won't look. I better stop now.
Really simple stuff is we just personalise everything. So we have, in the trucking industry, it's notorious for being one of the most dangerous industries to work in. We would personalise it. We would say things like, slogans would be, look after your mates. And other posters out there would be, my reason to be safe, where our workers would do, our employees would put photos of their families on the wall. We encouraged our drivers, for instance, to have photos of their families in their trucks as a consistent reminder. And we just embedded behaviours. There's some carrot and there's some stick to all of this. But the key message is in personalising it. Show somebody the numbers, and it's just not going to resonate. Show them a story about, somebody having to go home. We made this video when we had one of our drivers involved in a fatality, right? And so we interviewed the driver. We interviewed his wife. We didn't even go to the other family. And we showcased the very personal trauma that this person went through, and a lot of courage on that behalf. But you made it personal. Showing somebody stats really doesn't mean anything. But having a discussion around what matters to them, your family, the values, all that kind of stuff. That's what really resonates. And they are pretty simple stuff in your toolbox talks or your lunchtime, your morning tea breaks. Sharing a story, we call them safety moments. Sometimes I think they're a bit contrived, but it's actually when you make it really personal that makes all the difference. Catherine?
And consistently, until you're sick of saying it. When you're sick of saying it, you've got to keep saying it. If that's anything that's important to you, you've got to keep saying it. Don't stop saying it.
Yeah.
We probably have time for one final question, if there is one in the audience.
Coffee's more important.
Another resounding silence. We will break now for morning. Hold that thought. There is one.
There is.
It might just be a question more for office-based people, but everyone talks about retaining staff, and I've just joined an organisation and I'm new. so I'm full of ideas and change.
Good.
And I thought, is turnover such a bad thing when you come into a group, or groups hang on to people for, people boast about how long they've been there? Is turnover not a great thing to have, that you bring new ideas?
Turnover's important.
Some turnover is good. Yeah.
Very important.
So organisations, for instance, that have an incredibly low turnover, we call them, a lot of people, lifers. It has an impact on the organisation to innovate, only because you have people that become conditioned to a way of thinking, and they believe what they move into is the new normal. And so a little bit of turnover, injecting fresh talent into the business, people that are going to be provocateurs to a certain extent, giving them social licence and psychological freedom to be able to speak their mind and value that opinion, that makes a huge difference. And you need to do that. I mean, nothing new develops out of people thinking the same way consistently. That actually really matters significantly.
Okay, so thank you very much for your attention this morning, and we'll have a break now for morning tea, and the next session will start at 11:30.